with the lowest kids or, you know, kids that can't speak English. But we just want to let you guys know that, you know, what you're doing is wonderful and it will create joy in these kids' lives. And remember, 3rd grade, we're not done. We're still learning a lot more. And that's that opportunity to help them learn. And I heard this last year when we were doing a roundtable, that some of you guys built such great relationships with the kids that you can't wait to see them again in the school. And think about how they now want to read with others maybe, or maybe just seeing your face will have them understand what, you know, reading is and the joy with that and those components. And those are all really important things. And we're very thankful to have all of you guys here and take time out of your day to volunteer with those students.
And if you speak 2 languages and would like to work with students that are in one of our, specifically in our dual language schools, please let us know and we can make that happen, okay? All right, so we're going to dive in. So here's our agenda for today. What does it mean to be a reading buddy? What is fluency? Because we're going to really focus on fluency this year. How does it connect to being a good reader? You're going to have an experience around fluency. I'm going to show you a couple of tips and tricks for being a buddy. And then thank you again for being here. Okay, so what does it mean to be a reading buddy? It's a small group learning opportunity for students. Okay, so you'll be having 2 30-minute sessions in a school where you'll be focusing on 3rd grade, working on fluency with a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 kids per 1 adult, usually sitting at like a round table. It will be outside of the classroom. Okay, so you won't have to work inside, you'll be outside of the classroom. And the greatest part is you're going to make a new friend, or a couple of new friends, and they're going to make a new friend. They're going to work with one of you who believes that they can be a reader. What we know about kids is, if you believe in them, they will believe in themselves. If you don't believe in them, they don't believe in themselves either. Right? So we just have to believe in them and build up their confidence to take risks. And most importantly, we talk about joy, right? When we go to schools, we want to see joy. We want to see joy. We want to see happy kids and happy teachers. You know what they say, happy wife, happy life, right? Some husbands believe that, right? But I always said when I went to a school, even looking at a school for my own child, I went and I looked and I said, where's the joy in those classrooms? And some schools I went to, it was a miserable experience. Who wants to sit there? These little soldiers, I was like, we don't need that. We need some joy. And you can have joy and still learn. So, what is fluency? Right? Fluency is the ability to read a text with appropriate rate, which is like speed, right? With accuracy, which is like correctness, and then with prosody, which means it sounds like speaking, right? So, for example, I read this slide at what I thought was an appropriate rate for most people in this room. With accuracy, I pronounced all of the words correctly. Prosody, it sounds like speaking, like we're having a conversation. But if I read the slide like this and said the ability to read a text means appropriate rate, that's not prosody, right? It's not there yet. And some of our kids will read that like that. They'll read like word by word by word. It's not fluid. It doesn't have fluency yet. Yes?
I have so many questions. What about comprehension? Are we working with them on that too?
We will. We're going to start out with building fluency because here's the thing. If I'm a reader and I am reading like this with appropriate rate, speed, with accuracy, correctness, my mind is concentrating so much on pronouncing the words correctly that I'm not yet making meaning. So in order to make meaning, we have to build up a kid's fluency. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. You wanted to say something?
Just really quickly, I wanted to say that one of the measurements that we look at 3rd grade to see how they're making growth in reading is we look at their fluency. So I think that's just really important to remember. This is something that they're working on outside of you guys, and we are supporting in the classroom. So you guys will be one data point, but you're not everything in them making that progress. But they are working on that in other areas.
Just to give you a visual in your mind's eye, right? I think of fluency as being like synchronized swimmers. Do you ever see the beauty in synchronized swimming? Right? Like they're all together working, they create this beautiful scene in the water, right? That's true fluency in the water, right? We want to have that beautiful thing happen in the reading. So, but to get there, and this is where we are going to come into play here, is in order to get there, we have to have a couple of things. High-speed word recognition to free readers' cognitive resources, especially working memory, to address meaning. So again, if I'm concentrating word to word, I'm not really making meaning yet. And high speed does not mean a drag race, right? It doesn't mean I'm reading 250 words a minute. It just means my reading is more sing-songy, okay? Ability to group words appropriately into meaningful grammatical units for interpretation. So how do words fit? As good readers, when you're reading, do you find yourself skipping things in sentences? Do you know why your brain does that? Pattern recognition. I know that after this word usually takes place, right? So you develop that in your schema and your brain mapping, okay? Also too, because our eyes move faster than our brain comprehends sometimes. So we have like a lag. There's like a little bit of a lag between our eyes and our brain, okay? Rapid use of punctuation and the determination of where to place emphasis or where to pause to make sense of the text, right? So we know that punctuation is really important. Semicolons and colons can kill a sentence if not read correctly, right? Or the emphasis on a word, right? And sometimes we're like, what's that word, right? Okay? So we need to, like, where do we pause? How do we teach kids that they don't have to move so fast, that they need to slow down? Look at things in chunks, right? And then preliminary comprehension to allow unconscious attention to interpretation. So like as good readers, you're making meaning without realizing you're making meaning, right? You don't stop and say to yourself, did I just understand this paragraph? It's more of like, I didn't understand this paragraph, and I'm going to go back and reread in order for it to make sense. And it could be because you drifted off to La La Land somewhere, right? Or you heard a noise and something distracted you from like being in that text, right? And here, if we're reading something that we really love, like I love Adriana Triviani, I can read all of her books and be very happy, and there are things that bring me joy. But sometimes when I have to read things that are very technical, I have to read it with like a ruler, and I'm a pretty good reader. And I have to make notes because I have to make meaning of it in my own way, right? But I only learned that when I was hit with like very dense technical language, okay? All right. So how do you become a fluent reader? Like everything else in life, the only way to get better is to practice, right? So you're good drivers because you practice. You weren't born great swimmers, you practiced to become a good swimmer, right? Anything that you got good at, you got good at practicing, unless you're a prodigy. And that's a different story. Dr. Perry's son is a celloist, but he practices, how much time does he practice every day?
At least an hour a day.
At least an hour a day now, right? But if he wants to move up, right, and become more competitive, that time increases. So we only get better by practicing. And so you're a part of the practice.
And just to go over that too, so when we talked about those non-readers, sometimes we talk about frustration. But I think it's important to recognize that that exposure helps them get that practice. And it's really important. So part of that is also giving them, 3-second wait time, but then also correcting when they make a mistake. Making sure that we're stepping in and helping support. Not giving it to them, but helping them push along the way. Because if they don't get that exposure and they don't get to actually see that text, they're never going to get there. So that's part of that practice. We have to have them see that to be able to get there. And that's when we talk about the curriculum, we all get to learn that regular curriculum all together. Because we all need to be exposed to the same grade level content, and that's really an important component of that.
So if you have grandbabies, or remember from your own children, when kids are learning how to read, and they're like 18 months old, and parents are like, my daughter can read, right? And it's actually a milestone now on pediatrician's checklist. And they ask you, have they begun to read, right? And so what do you think that means when we say begun to read? What does that look like for a little guy?
Turning pages.
Turning pages of a book, realizing that we turn through the book. What else?
Recognizing words, see something.
Could be, right? They're beginning to like make associations between pictures and words. Yeah? There was another hand, yeah?
They've memorized the story and they're retelling it.
Yep, they memorized that story, right? And don't you skip that word. They will correct you, right? So they know, right? So they memorize it and they're reading. And really, yes?
Responding to something that you read to them, that show they're comprehending what you're reading.
Yeah, and the biggest milestone, which you're gonna like, people are always like, wow, is the fact that when kids have a book, and if you hand them the book, they know to turn it, and that there actually is a beginning, like they can actually turn the pages and see that this picture, if this picture doesn't look like this when I'm reading it, I can turn the book around and make sense that it's supposed to go this way, and that reading goes from left to right. It's really cool, right? And so, you know, our brains have only been hardwired to read for about 4,000 years. We've always been hardwired to speak and to listen, but to read, we've only begun that, according to the research, about 4,000 years ago. So it's relatively new in sort of like, right? It's a relatively new skill. And so when we look at the evolution of reading, it's like, oh, we're only 4,000 years in. We still got a long way to go. Right? Okay. So what does practice look like? And these are 4 things that we're going to talk about today. So practice looks like listening to a good reader read while the student follows along using predictable books, right? So you're the good reader, yes? So you can read while they're following along in their text, so they're hearing fluency in what it's supposed to sound like, okay? Or you can do what's called a repeated reading, and that's reading the same text at least 3 times. So when we talk about memorizing it, right, they're not going to memorize it in 3 times, but it gives them the ability to hear it, to make a connection, and to become more fluent. The other thing is a choral reading. And a choral reading is when we're reading together all at the same time. So think about the Pledge of Allegiance, right? We all say it at the same time. Or when you're in church and you're saying a prayer, or in temple and you're saying a prayer, reciting a prayer, you're all saying it at the same time. That's choral reading. I mean, in those senses, it's choral memorization, but we can do choral reading. Then we have something called echo reading. And this is where the reading buddy reads one line, and then the student repeats the same line. So like an echo, okay? Of these 4 here, which ones have you done in your own personal life? With either your grandkids, or if you were a teacher, or with your own kids? All of them, right? Yeah. So this isn't something that is relatively new, but we are repurposing these 4 strategies to create more fluent readers. When we have a book or a text, we do something called a book interview. And so before we start reading with kids, we'll show them the book and say, what do you think this story is about? Or what do you notice on the cover of the story? There's a picture of a mouse, there's cookies, there's crayons, right? And you're saying, so what do you think this story is about? And they may know some words on the cover, which is great. And they may already know the story too, right? Which is great as well. So we do something called a book interview, where we sort of just interview the cover and ask them questions about the cover. So when you're talking about comprehension, right, so we're starting to build their comprehension through the pictures, but we're also getting them to do something with activating their schema. And activating the schema is when you're getting them to make an association, like, do you like cookies? I like cookies. What's your favorite cookie? Right? Do you bake cookies? Do you buy cookies? When you eat Oreos, do you eat only the middle first? You throw the 2 chocolate cookies away like my son does? Right? So we try to make connections with that. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. So you're going to be my class, and we're going to do an echo reading. So if you give a mouse a cookie, written by Laura Numeroff, illustrated by Felicia Bond. If you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for a glass of milk. When you give him the milk, he'll probably ask you for a straw. When he's finished, he'll ask for a napkin. Then he'll want to look in a mirror to make sure he doesn't have a milk mustache. Why would he have a milk mustache? Right? So I can pop in, and so we're talking about comprehension, I can pop in and ask a question, right? Okay. When he looks in the mirror, he might notice his hair needs a trim. So he'll probably ask for a pair of nail scissors. When he's finished giving himself a trim, he'll want a broom to sweep up. He'll start sweeping. Okay? That's an echo reading. Do you think you could do that with kids? Sure. Yeah, it's easy, right? It's just getting them used to hearing your use of language and intonation. What is intonation? Expression, right? I could have read the book. He might get carried away and sweep every room in the house. He may even end up washing the floors as well. Who wants to listen to that?
We've heard it.
We've heard it. We've heard it by teachers, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to get excited. Yeah.
I'm sorry, are you just reading it, or are they also, are you just saying it to them and having them repeat, or are they also looking at the wording at the same time?
No, they should have the text as well.
They will.
Right, so in every classroom, that's a great question. In every classroom in this district, there are these purple books. They're part of the classroom library. And there are multiple, you see here, there's multiple copies. These ones are still shrink wrapped, which is bad because they should be unshrinked at this point. But there's enough copies for your group of 3. There's 5, so there's enough for everyone to follow along with you, yeah. But I didn't have 50 copies of, okay? But yeah, I always say because we want to make the connection between what they're hearing and what they're seeing. We have 2 questions here.
Do you have them follow along with your finger, or you don't care?
No, they can,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
As I said earlier, when I read things that are scientific, I use a ruler or a piece of paper, something that helps me like focus in it, or if the text is really tiny. I'm getting old, I don't know if to like wear glasses to read or not anymore, right? So I use a pointer. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong, even though Sister Mary Ellen told me in first grade, don't use your finger to read. There's nothing wrong with using a finger, a pencil, something.
We still do it.
I know, I still do it all the time.
And there's like reading strips. Sometimes kids use that. It's different colors. Sometimes colors help pop out things for kids. So different colors work for kids. So it's the best strategy for them. So there's not one all, answer, but whatever works for them. If they just want to look at the text, then that's fine. You had it down here, we had a question?
I was going to ask if it was working on one-to-one correspondence when you're reading.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
I didn't know if that was like an emphasis or not.
So it can. You're going to get to know your kidlets, right? Your 6 kids, because you'll work in 2 groups of 3, and you're going to see what works best for them. And you'll make decisions. You'll know. I mean, you know. If you didn't know, can I tell you something? You wouldn't be here today, right? If you didn't know that gut feeling, because you know.
How many of you guys had the opportunity last year to be in the schools? That's great. You guys are back. You know, it was fun. I'm guessing you're excited to see those kids. I know that's something that we all heard, you know, throughout. So it's great to have you guys back and also keep on learning, right? New strategies just to have in your toolkit.
So, I know you said that you've already done like screening for dyslexia, so we didn't have dyslexic kids, but there are more reading disabilities than dyslexia.
Yes.
These kids, like, I mean, we may have.
So we're looking at kids that are struggling readers, but not those non-readers. We're looking at the kids a little bit far off, just like a little smidget off grade level, not the kids that are way below grade level. And it's something that might come up, and we do, you know, rearrange groups all the time. And if you see something, I would definitely not just not share it. I would share with the teacher. You know, any observations are always appropriate and
That's my
supported.
next question. How do we give you, I mean, I assume you want our feedback.
Of course. I mean, I know last year what we were able to do is at the end, we were able to give a survey. I know we don't want to wait till the end, you know. We're going to hopefully start in mid-October, and then, you know, a couple months in, we will probably send out a survey, but, you know, even before then, I know we have, you know, as we said, somebody else on board now, so we'll be able to reach out. You are always welcome to reach out to us and let us know if you see something, something that's not working. You know, last year we really, I have to be honest, we targeted more with comprehension. And we saw maybe that's not the best route to focus on. So now we're taking a different approach, and that's how I started. And we're going to focus this year on fluency, and then we're going to go from there. So.
But always, if anyone sees anything that's ever really concerning, so now that you're here, you've all been fingerprinted, right? So welcome to the world of what's called mandated reporters, which means, you know, if you see something, say something. Like, you know, and there's lots of things that we can see, and kids sometimes will become very comfortable with people that are outside of the classroom, right? And sometimes they'll say things, and if any kid ever says anything, like, you know that you have to report it. Okay, so you reach out to Marge or Roz, and then we'll take care of it on our end. So there's a lot of, so these books, right, there's a lot of different, so this one actually is called 13 as a Crowd, and it's about a group of kids that are playing on the playground, and there's like the odd man out. And then there's like this, there's one about soccer, there's lots on soccer and baseball, there's lots of different things. And so the teachers will, or should, choose materials that are of high interest to their kids. If not, you know, you're always welcome to, you know, bring in resources as well. Like, no one's saying you can't do that. We're talking about purchasing some resources as well for the groups. So
Every classroom has a library. That's our hope, you know.
and every school has a library.
We actually look at reading differently than some other school districts, right? So we look at it as more of like whole reading, in the sense where like your engagement is where you should be reading. So if I really enjoy sports and dinosaurs, I can pick a book that might be higher than I'm actually able to read a book on, you know, ballerinas, because I really have that interest and I know more vocabulary, I have more background knowledge, I'm able to decode a lot more and I understand it. So those are pieces that we have. You know, Stacy was just saying, if you handed my son something about cello, he would be able to tell you everything about the cello. He was able to go into classrooms last year and teach kids about the cello, where he's learning himself, but that's somewhere his engagement is. So every kid's going to be different. You will see, though, that teachers will cater more to those kids with engagement and not just say, you're only allowed to read this level of a book, because we don't do that here in Norwalk Public Schools.
We don't do level libraries.
And we are looking into other things if we need as we go along.
Yes.
So I haven't been in a school yet, but I went to training last spring, and they were emphasizing the responsive reading curriculum. Is that something that you're still working on?
It's reciprocal teaching.
Reciprocal teaching.
Yep. So it is a strategy that we still teach in our schools. Again, though, it's more aligned with comprehension. And so we have 5 pillars of reading. We start at the beginning with phonemic awareness and phonics, where we really get those kids to read. Phonemic awareness is just understanding the sounds and how to make a word, like J, M, and then we put that together to make the word gym. We don't have that intact. We can't even look at print. Then we look at the print, and then we're starting to get back. and understanding how short sounds and long sounds and digraphs and those components. Then we get to fluency, and that's where we're starting to work on fluency, which is the components of the accuracy and the prosody and putting things together with rate, okay? And then we get to the comprehension. We realize that the comprehension is a really important component, but you really need the background knowledge, the vocabulary, and it's a higher level. So we wanted to take a step back, look at the fluency first, and also, as I said this before, it's a priority measure for our school district and our state for all students to have that. So when we're looking at struggling students, we first look at that fluency. And so when Stacy and I collaborated on this, I said we were working on comprehension, and she's like, wait, you didn't look at the fluency first? And I was like, let's look at that. So that's how we're like restructuring a little. We still do reciprocal teaching in our classrooms. We still have intervention. We are very lucky to have reading and writing improvement teachers and literacy coaches in every school K-8. So they are still working with other resources to help support them. This is just another layer of support.
But we're not going in there and following that.
No.
Well, and when I did that last year, it was never that you have to go in and do step by step and step. It was another strategy to put in your toolkit. And you're lucky enough that you have that strategy. So part of that is questioning, right? Predicting. And all of those was what Stacy was kind of going over with a book interview. Where I heard the word mustache. What's the word mustache mean? Can anybody, think, can we make a prediction about what we think it based on those context clues? So using those strategies is only going to help support you. And I think the comprehension is a really important embedded piece with the fluency, because if you don't have the comprehension intact, you're not going to be able to be a fluent reader, because you're not understanding what you're reading. So it all goes hand in hand.
And so I have a slide here called Stumbles, Bumbles, and Fix-Its, right? And so one was the big book, book interview, preview some hard vocabulary words. So like if you're thinking about the word choral, kids may read it as like chorale, and not like it looks the same, but yet it's different, and one means one thing and the other means the other, right? Help the reader out, tell the word, and have them repeat it out loud. There's nothing worse than a kid who's just trying to struggle, because they're going to be like, right, tell it, give it to them, it's okay. Write something, so here's, yes, I forgot about this part. So we were asked to include maybe some writing, like an opportunity for kids to write. Some of the volunteers last year thought that would be really great. We're going to purchase these little composition notebooks, they're so cute. I saw them at another school and I was like, this is the perfect size, because it's not a full paper where kids maybe get, it's like I have to fill this all up. But in the end, if you wanted to have them write something, you could, right? So it's like their favorite part of the story, or maybe a new word that I learned, like something small, or even draw a picture. So maybe some of our kids aren't at the point yet of like, maybe forming full-blown great sentences, but they can draw a picture, right? So they'll all have these little notebooks. And so those are some of the things. Tell the kids the words. Preview the vocabulary before. It's okay. Again, remember, there doesn't have to be a lot of ta-das. They'll have enough ta-das in their life. Let's make this like un-ta-da-ish. We have a resource called Wonders from McGraw-Hill, okay? It's a great resource that has a ton of other materials besides just that sort of like anthology of stories that kids read. And this is from one of the resources, the intervention resources. And this whole book is a whole book, 342 pages on fluency. And so I picked out some pages that I thought would be helpful to you in all of your spare time to read and go through, right? So you could be more familiar, maybe feel a little more comfortable when you go into those classrooms on the first day, okay? I know that you can always reach out to Roz and Marge, but you can always reach out to us as well. We'll make sure that
we're going to send the slides to Marge, so that if you have any questions, the packet, we'll make sure that we PDF it also, so that if you want a copy, to look at later, you'll be able to see that.
And we'll put our information at the bottom.
Yeah.
And you can email us.
Is this what you just saw?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no sense in us keeping
There's
it
no
top
secret.
secret. Right? There should be very few ta-da moments in education, right, where there's like the great unveiling, like. Okay, any other, yes?
I'm just wondering, would it be possible, and I don't know if it's a violation of whatever rules or anything, do you think we could have access to the Wonders so that if we wanted to find the poetry that went with that particular book or the website?
Sure, I can share with you what I have is a universal login.
Okay,
So I can tell you that navigating the website is a little tricky.
Yeah.
So you have to be a little patient. And I'll try to put together like a one-pager that says like, with some
Because if you
directions.
go on it, you can find the passages that complement
Right.
those books.
Yes, and so there's also, every student has what we call a Reader's Writer's Companion, AKA a workbook, okay, it's a fancy name now. And that Reader's Writer's Companion is aligned to like whatever the kids are learning that week, right? So in that book is what's called a read aloud story,
Correct.
or the shared reading, right? So that story will have been, or will be, part of their learning experience. So if you wanted to preview or review that story, that's a great strategy as well.
Okay, so it wouldn't violate any
No,
licenses?
no.
Okay.
No, I have a universal login.
All
I'll
right.
share that with you, but I will warn you, it's a little tricky
Yeah.
to navigate. But I'll put together like a little cheat sheet. I didn't find something until like a year in. I was like, oh, that's who that is. So they didn't improve the website yet. Okay? Any other questions for us? Yes.
Not a question, but just a tip. Kids love props. So when you're going through the book, like we did one on a marine ecosystem, and they were talking about coral. Just happened to have a piece of coral at home that I brought in, and they just love to be able to touch it and ask questions about it. So, and a globe is a really good thing to have handy. Because a lot of times the books are about places, and they want to know where those places are.
Yeah, and they're going to feel so comfortable with you that they're going to ask you questions that they maybe would not share in a large group setting, like with 25 other kids in the classroom, right? Or B, like they just would be like embarrassed, or maybe they don't have their voice yet. And so in a small group of 3-on-1, they'll feel safer to do that, and they take risks.
The schools know you're coming, all right? And the kids, you're coming during their literacy block. And literacy block is usually an hour and a half. And there is a point, now the teachers don't talk for an hour and a half in 3rd grade. So the kids during that literacy block are put into smaller groups where different kids are reading different things, or they're doing their workbooks, or they're doing their writing. At that point, the kids will be sent to you, okay? So you'll have them for a half hour, and then that group will go back to the class, and a new group will come magically. At some schools, you might be in the library, all the reading buddies in the library. In some schools, they may put you in another little room. You may be out in the hall. At first, last year, people were in the classrooms, and reading buddies found that way too distracting for the kids and for them. So the way it's worked, we have a liaison in each school who coordinates this. It's usually the reading coach, or the literacy coach. And they work with the classroom teacher. You don't have to go into the classroom teacher and say, so what am I doing today? The coach should have materials ready for you when you get there. Now, you're only there for a half hour. You'd be surprised. You're not going to be flying through books, And especially if you're doing some of these things, the same materials you may be working with for a couple of weeks. So it won't be that hard. What we did ask is, at first somebody brought the kids, but after a few times the kids just can't. They're very confident, let me tell you. The one thing that worked well last year is sometimes the buddies talked to the teachers, but most times they didn't, because the teachers were busy teaching. And you don't want to be stopping them from what they're doing in order to talk to you. So what we were doing last year, and this is why we really need Gina, is people were writing to me. I asked them to, if you have a problem, if you have a question, sometimes it was just something simple like, we finished our book and there was no new book. Sometimes it was, I can't come next week, okay, because I'm away. Sometimes it was just a little problem that emerged. If you write it to me, or Gina will probably start taking this over. Gina will start taking, sorry, Gina will start taking this over. She'll write to the coordinator in the school to solve it. What we really try to do is keep the number of emails that the schools receive low. Everybody's been on the end of an email that, like one after another. So we can't have 6 or 10 people writing to the principal or to the coordinator. So you write to either me, we'll get this ironed out in the next couple of weeks, either me or Gina, and she'll write to the coordinator and get an answer right to you. So that's the communication, Gina. Okay. Any other questions, Jay? Yeah?
So we get to the school for the first time, is there an office that will tell us where to go?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Ross?
You'll find when you go into the schools, if you haven't been in the schools in the last 20 years, nobody just walks into a school. You press the bell, there's a security person right there. He will be aware that you're coming, or she will be aware that you're coming, and send you either to the office or the literacy coach. The first time, somebody will reach you.
Ross, and mention
Oh, that's right.
the lanyards?
Yes, Marge is very good. We'll get you a lanyard with a little tag, so you don't have to go through the security process every time.
So we pick that up at the first time we go?
Exactly.
The schools will have them. We'll make them between now and the start, and we leave them at the schools, and you pick them up, and then you keep them.
Right, and then you keep them. Yes.
This morning I got an email from you with that schedule,
That's the
and
next
I
coming.
checked off my first, second, and third choices. When will we know?
Okay, you see, you jumped
Next
in.
question.
Okay. So this morning, before I left my house, I clicked send on the MailChimp. And what you should have received this morning, and if you haven't, I welcome you to take out your phones right now, is an email that said, click on this link and pick your choices, okay? There were a couple of questions like, did you come last year? Have you been fingerprinted? Has everybody been fingerprinted?
No.
Oh, great, wow, okay. And if you haven't, just make sure you have an appointment. And then I asked you to choose your first, second, and third choice. It's the same as this schedule, and hopefully it works out pretty well. Jefferson, Kendall, they were great last year. They said, I don't care what day the Ridgey buddies come, you just let me know and so there's a separate question if you want Kendall. Jefferson, Deb, he just wrote this to me, they'd like us to work in the 4th grade.
Well, I think we're sticking with third.
Okay, then this may not be the right time. So if you fill that form out, we will have it in a spreadsheet and then we'll assign people. You certainly, I can't guarantee that you'll get your first choice because it just can't happen. But I hope to guarantee that you'll get first, second, or third.
We don't have Cranberry on the list right this second.
That's what I was just going to say.
Cranberry is starting in December, and I think it's on the form.
Yeah.
Because they have no parking now because they just knocked down the other building. Columbus, better known as Concord, better known as CMS. They feel overwhelmed by the number of volunteers that they already have. What a great problem to have, But I'm hoping we can get in there later in the year or next year. Right, so what we found last year, a lot of people wanted Wolf Pit. Wolf Pit, way down here at the bottom, but I don't know, Reading Buddies live close to Wolf Pit. So that's good, and anybody who worked at a school last year and they want to work at that school this year, they get first priority. But the need is great. I have to say, the need is great in all of the schools. So no matter what school you want to volunteer, and there's gonna be a,
There's been mentioning of different names of people that we can contact based on, yourself or others. Can you send an email?
Oh, absolutely.
With the email addresses, please.
when we assign everybody, then you'll get like a normal email that will say, here, and this is who you need to contact. Yeah.
I apologize if you already answered this earlier because I came in late. But is there any formal record keeping that we are to do related to what we do with the kids? Like, is there any paperwork, so to speak?
No, there is no requirement for any kind of keeping, any kind of formal record keeping. Somebody's last year really liked to just jot a little note to the teacher to say, this is what I did this time. And I'm just trying to keep paperwork kind of simple, but feel free to do that. That would be fine.
We don't want any complaints from your union.
Yes.
As far as schedule, is there a my first choice of school does not work for my schedule, and I would really prefer to be in that school. Is there a possibility that another more time slots will be added?
Well, this is when the kids have
Is that
literacy, so the
this
time is
school?
probably not negotiable.
Okay.
The day of the week, you say, I don't know why Thursday.
I mean,
wasn't
day
my
of the
favorite
week.
day.
The day of the week.
But I think maybe in the way the cycle of teaching goes, that Thursday's the day that there's a lot of practice day.
It also is probably the least days that we have maybe days off, and it's the most consistent. That's just what I'm thinking maybe,
Well,
but.
Mondays are terrible.
Yeah, and Friday attendance, that's another thing. We ran into that problem last year, that, you know, if it was a Friday, the attendance with the kids wasn't as good as other days.
If you write to me directly, you've got my email address.
Well, the email.
There may be some, to see how many buddies we have for that school. Let's say the Thursday slots are all filled up, and we could ask. And they can say no.
Yeah, I'm just hoping because I'm with the school all the time and I'm seeing the need. Like I was with the fifth graders last time and there's just so much need.
Well, and sometimes
This is
if
fifth
they
grade
know
level
you, they might be saying, you know, one buddy asked me, oh my gosh, who went last year religiously and said, I can't do it now on Thursday, can I do it on Wednesday? And the school said, I want that buddy. So yes, you can. So if they know you, perhaps.
All right, thank you.
Hopefully, I know, Thursday was a big day, I couldn't believe it. Yes.
My case, personally, I can only do Mondays and Wednesdays, and just to match what I'm more experienced with, either Jefferson or Kendall, which one has more need for ESLs?
Jefferson.
Jefferson? Okay.
They have dual language.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
But
would be fantastic.
we may have to change the time for Jefferson.
Also, Silvermine, we did recognize last year that there are special challenges with that school based on them being a fully dual language school. So if anybody has experience with that, that is very helpful in that environment. Everybody's loved going there last year, but it did present its own challenges.
Yeah, because of the way Silvermine teaches, that it's 3 days a week, it's English and then it's Spanish. So
But the kids just even understanding everything too.
the timing was different. So Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a personal question. Are all the schools handicapped accessible?
Are all the schools handicapped? I would say there's some schools you want to stay away from. You want to stay away from Wolfton.
Yeah.
You want to stay away from Jefferson.
No, Jefferson has an elevator.
Okay, don't stay away from Jefferson.
Or I know Marvin.
Kendall's fine.
Kendall's fun and Marvin is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both are fine. Wolf Pit, maybe,
I think Wolf Pit and maybe Tracy.
but even Wolf Pit, they have the library, so that is acceptable.
Yeah, but you have lots of other schools. Wolfton is crowded already.
I'm just looking at the times on all these schools. Is wind time still first thing in the morning? And would they be using us during wind time?
There's one school that's going to use
Cranberry.
Cranberry.
But I have not heard others using wind time. No, we're using literacy block.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some folks don't know what wind time is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wind time is, if you read my article that I wrote short months ago, So it's a, right, whatever I need, or
What I need.
what I need. And it's a time where the whole school stops, they divide the kids up into lots of different groups, and some kids do literacy, some kids do math, some kids, my granddaughter was doing coding. There's lots of different things that are being happen, and everybody's teaching, the principal, the assistant principal, everybody's teaching, theoretically. But anyway, it's a fun kind of thing, but it's better, but I think it's a half hour.
Half-hour block.
It's a half hour block. And I think it travels during the day, depending on the grade. Yep.
Hi, is there any kind of parking thing that we need for our cars or?
No, they don't have parking passes or anything there.